Hi dragonflies and butterflies. Today's lesson is for you to understand the minute hands and the minute scale on a clock. So what you'll need to show that you can do today is be able to distinguish between the second, minute and hour hand on a clock, to be able to explain the minute hand scale, and to be able to label quarter past, half past, quarter to and o'clock. Here is a clock. If you have a clock with three hands, we call the hands these pointy bits here. They're called hands. They don't look like hands like we have on our bodies, but we call them hands. Maybe because they point to different parts of the clock. So the long, really long one, the long skinny one here, this is the second hand. We looked at that a few days ago, the second hand. That measures the number of seconds. And then you've got two other hands. The longer of the two, the one that's longer, it's usually a little bit thinner than the other one. This one's shorter and thicker. This one's sort of thinner and longer. So the longer one of the two is the minute hand. And finally, the sort of shorter, thickest one is the hour hand. This is the one that measures the hours. So just to go over that again, the long, thinnest one, the really skinny one, is the second hand. That measures the number of seconds that goes around the clock. The long, thin one, so the sort of medium thinnest one, but still really long, is the minute hands. That measures the minutes going round the clock. And the shorter, thickest one measures the hours. You might find a clock with only two hands. As you can see on this clock, we've only got two hands. If you find a clock with two hands, it means it doesn't have a second hand. So it doesn't have a hand that measures seconds, but it does have the one that measures hours and the one that measures minutes. I wonder if you can tell which of these hands measures minutes and which measures seconds. Pause the video and see if you can tell an adult. Let's see if you were right. Remember, the long, thinner one is the minute hand. So this one here is the minute hand. And the shorter, thicker one is the hour hand. So this one here is the hour hand. If you have a clock like this in your house, pause the video and see if you can tell an adult which hand is the minute hand and which hand is the hour hand. If you have a second hand on the clock as well, see if you can tell an adult which one that is. If you only have a clock that looks like this is called a digital clock. This does not have hands. This just tells you the numbers and tells you the time by looking at the numbers. So you won't be able to show the hands on this type of clock. So if you do not have a clock that looks like this, then you can go on to the next task. So now we've completed success criteria 1. We can distinguish between the second, minute and the hour hands. So now we need to have a look at success criteria 2. I can explain the minute hand scale. When we talk about the minute hand scale, we mean the scale that goes around the clock here, these little lines. So we're talking about what we're measuring and what each of those little lines represents. So this is just exactly like a number line, but it's in a circle. Let's have a look at what it would look like if it were a number line. Here is the clock in a number line format. So it's exactly the same as you've just seen it in a circle, except I've put it in a line. Let's zoom in to part of this and have a look at what each of the lines mean. The scale starts at 12. Each of these little lines represents 1 minute. So if we count along the line, let's see how many minutes we've got between each number. So we start here at 0 minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when we get to 1, we mean we've got to 5 minutes. Now, these numbers at the top, these represent the hours. So we're going to ignore those for a minute and we're just going to think about each of the little lines and that they represent minutes. Now we have to remember how many minutes there are because it doesn't tell you the numbers. So let's have another look. So we've got 0 minutes at 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes when we get to 1. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 minutes when we get to 2. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 minutes when we get to the number 3. Let's move it along a little bit and carry on. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So it's 20 minutes when we get to 4. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 25 minutes when we get to 5. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 30 minutes when we get to 6. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35 minutes when we get to 7. 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. 40 minutes when we get to 8. 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. So it's 45 minutes when it gets to 9. 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. So it's 50 minutes when it gets to the number 10. 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. 55 minutes when it gets to 11. And 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. 60 minutes when it gets back to 12. So we can count in 5s to check how many minutes there are between each number. Starting at 12, which would be 0. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. That shows us how many minutes have gone past. The reason a clock scale is in a circle is you want it to keep going round and round again. So once you've gone all the way to 60, remember 60 minutes are in an hour, that means an hour has passed. So you want to start again and start counting the minutes. So that's why it is in a circle. Let's have a look at the minute hand scale in a circle. Starting at 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 minutes have gone past. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if the minute hand, as you can see here, is on the number 2, we know that 10 minutes have gone past. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. If the minute hand is pointing at the 3, we know that 15 minutes have gone past, and so on. Let's practice counting in our 5s all the way round to 12. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. And then we'd go back round again to 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. Why don't you pause the video and practice counting around the clock in 5s? So we're going to ignore the hour hand for a minute and we're just going to focus on the minute hand. So I want you to imagine this is measuring the minutes going around the clock. Remember, this, number 12, means 0 minutes have passed. And we start counting when we go round to the numbers. We don't count in ones. This does not mean 1 minute has passed. Remember, it's 5 every time there's a number because there's little ones in here in between the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if the minute hand is pointing at 1, how many minutes have passed? That's right, it's 5. If the minute hand was pointing at 2, 10 minutes would have passed. If the minute hand was pointing at 3, 15 minutes would have passed. And so on. So if my minute hand was pointing here, how many minutes would have passed? Yes, that's right, it's 25. Because 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes have passed. How many minutes have passed if my minute hand is pointing here? Is it 8? No, because remember these numbers are measuring the hours. It's these numbers that are measuring the minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. So 40 minutes have passed if the minute hand is pointing here. How many minutes have passed if the minute hand is pointing here? That's right, it's 55. Well done. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. Well done. So now we have explained the minute hand scale. So we understand that the minute hand is measured by a scale that goes around the clock that we can't really see. And it doesn't always tell us the 5, 10, 15, 20. We have to work that out for ourselves. So we have to remember that the minutes are being measured in groups of 5 every time it points to a different number. Well done. So now that we've done that, we need to have a look at success criteria 3. So success criteria 3 is labelling quarter past, half past, quarter to and o'clock. So you might remember half past and o'clock from year 1. Let's look at that again. We say o'clock when the minute hand is pointing at 12. We say o'clock because it means 0 minutes have gone past. It's literally at 0. Because remember our minute scale, we have got 0 minutes at 12. That means that whichever hand the hour is pointing at, it will be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So if the minute hand is pointing at 12, we call that o'clock. If the minute hand goes round like this all the way to the 6, then you can see that the minute hand has gone round half of the clock. You see that this is half of the clock. Remember our fractions. So if the minute hand has gone round half of the clock, then when the minute hand gets to the 6, we call it half past. So if the minute hand is pointing at 12, we call it o'clock. If the minute hand is pointing at 6, we call it half past. Now, if the minute hand has gone to the 3, you will see that the minute hand has gone round a quarter of the way around the clock. Let's have a look. Can you see that I've split our whole clock into 4 equal parts, and I've got one of them. So 1/4, this is 1/4 of the clock. So the minute hand, once it gets round to the number 3, it has been round a quarter of the clock. So we call this, if the minute hand is here, we call it quarter past. So when the minute hand gets to the 3, we call it quarter past. If the minute hands if the minute hands are here at 12, we call it o'clock. If the minute hand gets to the 1, it's 5 minutes past. The 2, it's 10 minutes past. If it gets to the 3, we say quarter past because it's gone a quarter of the way round the clock. If it gets to 4, it's 20 minutes past. 5, 25 minutes past. 6, it gets to half past. Once we've got to half past, we look at the rest of the clock by saying how many minutes is it until we get back up to the top. So here, let's count how many minutes there are until we get back up to the top of the clock. If our minute hand was here at the 7, let's count how many minutes there are until we get back up to the top. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. There are 25 minutes until we get back up to the top of the clock. So we call this 25-2. That means 25 minutes till we get back to the top. 25-2. If the minute hand was here, we need to think how many minutes are there until we get back up to the top of the clock. So let's count. 5, 10, 15, 20. There are 20 minutes until we get back up to the top of the clock. So this we call 22. If the minute hand is here pointing at the 9, then here we say there is a quarter of the way to go until we get back to the top of the clock. Can you see there is another quarter here? Let me show you. That is another 1 out of the 4 pieces that make the clock. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we say this is 1/4 because there is a quarter of the way to go until we get back to the top. 1/4. If the minute hand is pointing at the 10, then we count how many minutes there are until we get back up to the top. So 5, 10. There are 10 minutes until we get back up to the top. You can imagine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we call that 10-2. Okay, let's just go through that again so that we know what we call each part of the clock as the minute hand goes around. I'm going to use a little lightsaber for the minute hand here. So if the minute hand is pointing at the 12, we say o'clock. If the minute hand is pointing at the 1, we say 5 past. If the minute hand is pointing at the 2, we say 10 past. If the minute hand is pointing at the 3, we say quarter past, because remember, a quarter of the clock has gone round. The minute hand's pointing at the 4, we say 20 past. The minute hand is pointing at the 5, we say 25 past. The minute hand is pointing at the 6, we say half past, because half of the clock has gone round. After we get past the halfway point, the half past points, we start thinking how many minutes to the next part of the clock, the next time we get back up to the top of the clock. So when we get to the 7, we say 25 to. When we get to the 8, we say 22. When we get to the 9, we say quarter to. When we get to the 10, we say 10 to. And when we get to the 11, we say 5 to. So we've done lots and lots of learning today. We've looked at the difference between the second minute and the hour hand. So the second hand, the minute hand and the hour hand. We've looked at the minute hand scale and how there's 5 minutes every time you go round one of the numbers on the clock. And we've looked at quarter past, half past, quarter to and o'clock. So now it's time to show what you've learnt. I would like you to create a clock face at home. If you've got a paper plate, you could use a paper plate to do this. If not, use a piece of paper and cut out a circle. So remember, your 12 has got to go at the top of the clock. And then your 3 is going to go about a quarter of the way round. The 6 is going to be half of the way round, so at the bottom. And your 9 is going to be a quarter of the way to the next 12. So then you can fill in the rest of the numbers. And what you've got to do now is create a minute hand. So remember, the minute hand is the longer, thinner one. It's not the shorter, slightly fatter one. It's the longer, thinner one. So you've got to create a minute hand. So here's my minute hand that I've just created out of paper. So I'm going to go round the clock now and I'm going to say what we would say if the minute hand was pointing at the different numbers. So here at 12, it's o'clock, 5 past, 10 past, quarter past, 20 past, 25 past, half past. Now remember, we're going to 25 to, 22, quarter to, 10 to, 5 to, o'clock. I'd like you to do that and practice that a few times. Once you've finished doing that, test a parent. Point it somewhere and ask your parent what the minute hand is saying. If they don't say it correctly, remember to correct them and explain. Good luck, dragonflies and butterflies. Make sure you email your teacher to let them know how you got on and if there's anything that you found tricky or if you are happy and confident with all of it. Good luck!